All right, looks like we are live. Let me check. Takes
Let's
like a
go
few
ahead
seconds to
and check.
load. Let's go. I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be good.
All right, all
Um,
right, all right. Is
let's
anyone
see.
here? Let's see. I'm checking out right now.
This is on your LinkedIn, is that right?
Yep, yep.
Hmm.
Let's see.
Let's see here. And maybe for those people who are tuning in, let us know where you guys are tuning in from
I
as
know,
we
right?
go live.
This is my first LinkedIn live on my page, by the way. So I'm very excited for this.
Oh,
But oh, we are live. There
yeah, I
we go.
did.
All right, awesome. I have a lot. Whoa, there's a lot of people connected. Awesome. Where you guys are tuning in from? Let us know.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Jerry, I'm so excited. I see a lot
Yeah,
of friends
honestly, this has been
here.
a long time coming. We were just talking. We're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe it took us like a year, 2 years for us to finally plan this. So I'm so
I
happy
know.
and excited that we're doing this.
I know. It's been like forever since we were like sort of planning it and other planning. I was
That's
like, you know
right.
what? I'm gonna start 2021 with the one and only Jerry Lee.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is that I feel like I haven't done much LinkedIn lives recently. I feel like consulting has kind of shifted away from that. So it's finally glad to finally be back here.
I know, and especially you're like the first person I ever bring on LinkedIn Live. So like the honor
I
is
am
mine, by the
pumped.
way. No, I'm honored. Okay, so we have a lot of people here. Jerry, your glasses look amazing. Someone said, "Oh, Elizabeth. Hey, Elizabeth, how you
Elizabeth
doing?"
Morgan, she's a bomb. She's number one.
Oh my God, I love her. Okay, so I see people from New York, New Jersey, Vancouver, Houston, Texas, Singapore. Wow, shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I promise you this will be an hour that will help you forever. Because I myself have learned a lot from Jerry. I can tell you that before I even started Max Up, I was on a call with Jerry. And like the
That's right.
questions that Jerry asked me, let me tell you, I was like so surprised because that was the first time no someone ever asked me those type of questions that let me think. No, let me do it. Let me think for so long about like what were like my real goals, like not just like company wise, but like in general. And so I really appreciated that, and I know that you guys will learn a lot from Jerry.
Yeah.
But so Jerry, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, I am happy to be here. I am honored to be Stephanie's first guest, but more importantly, sharing time with each and every single one of you guys. And before we get started, let us know where you are in your career. Are you guys students? Are you guys professionals? Are you guys executives? And more importantly, don't forget to do the thumbs up to let us know that you guys are having a good time. And I'm excited to get started.
Awesome, awesome. As Jerry said, if you guys are liking and enjoying this, let me tell you, I am the number one advocate for energy. Wherever I go, I'm like energized, like let's do it, let's get it. My energy right now is 100%. I hope everyone's energy is 100% because I'm energy. If you're energized for energy, on the comments. If you're energized for energy on the comments, because really want to see it. And if you're liking this, you should mention someone else in your connections because they're about to get some real stuff here with Jerry. All right,
That's
so
right.
Jerry, I've been mentioning your name for so long, but people probably don't even know who's Jerry, right? So let me introduce you to my connections. Hi everyone. First of all, thank you so much for being here. For those of you who is the first time seeing me on live, my name is Stephanie, the CEO of MaxUp. I am actually on my last year of college. Woohoo! But I'm currently doing my fourth internship. I've been transitioning from finance accounting to tech, and I've been helping more than 10,000 people in the last year, actually. Being able to grow my connections to followers to almost 20,000. So, woohoo, do that as well. But
Hey.
I'm so excited because the person I have next to me has almost 100,000 followers on LinkedIn. This guy's killing it. Jerry used to work at Google. He was actually the first intern from his college to actually intern at Google, which is a huge deal. And so I want to introduce him to you. I want him to introduce himself to you guys. So, Jerry, why don't you start by saying, name, what do you work? And then I always like to ask this question. What is the quote or philosophy that you live by and why?
Yeah, that's a deep question. Well, first, Stephanie, thank you so much for having here. I see that there's about 75 people here. Thank you guys so much for joining in. I'm so excited to share the next hour with you guys, and hopefully you guys find it valuable. So a little bit about me. I'm Jerry. I'm from the LA area. Let me know down in the chat if you guys are from the LA area. I'd love connecting and seeing people from the LA area. And if not, you can click the red X button over here. No, I'm just kidding. Stay up.
Nah.
So I'm from the LA area, and I grew up in a small town, or this is a town called Torrance, California, and that's where I really started that's where I spent almost my entire livelihood and my childhood. So after college, after high school, I got into college at Babson College, graduated in 2017, and as Stephanie has said, I was the first intern at Google from my alma mater. And afterwards, I was hired as the youngest analyst in my organization, was promoted 8 months after that. A year after that, 6 months after that, became a strategy and operations manager. A year after that, a senior strategy and operations manager. And then I left my role at Google to be a manager of product strategy at Lucid. I'm also the COO of Wansulting. So if anyone knows here, are familiar with Wansulting, have seen my stuff or Jonathan's stuff, I want to see hashtag Wansulting in the chat, because we love energy and we love working with underdogs and turning them into winners. So Stephanie, thank you so much for having me and allowing me to share a little bit about my story.
Thank you so much, Jerry. And Jonathan is on the chats here hyping you up, saying that you live with him. Shout out to Jonathan Javier.
Yeah. How do you kick him out? Is there a way to ban him on this thing? No.
He lives with you. He might as well just cross the door and open your room right now. No, but thank you so much, Jerry, for that intro. I think that a lot of people here will really, resonate with your story. If you're a student on the chat, put that I'm a student or I'm a proud student, right? Because you shouldn't be embarrassed to be on LinkedIn and be a student. That's awesome, right? And if you're a professional, put that you're a professional. We want to see who are we really talking to in the audience. And by the way, guys, Jerry has an amazing story. You guys will definitely love it. And I know, Jerry, that you shared a little bit about, your early sort of like Jerry, 10-year-old, 15-year-old Jerry. Can you tell us, I know that you share a lot about your parents on LinkedIn and how they have inspired you and how your family has inspired you. So can you tell us what lessons did you learn from your parents and how did that help you be the person that you are today?
Yeah. And this is something I love talking about, because I feel like we as professionals, especially those who come from first generation low income background, if you guys come from either of those backgrounds, or maybe even both, low income, first gen, type it down in the chat, type hashtag first gen, hashtag low income, because I honestly think that that's a huge superpower that I have, right? As a result of me being first gen and low income, what happened was it forced my parents to be hard workers. There was no backup plan, and there was no opportunity for us to reach and ask for help, right? My parents had to fight through everything for me and my brother to have the opportunities that we have today. And that's what fuels me, right? That's what pushes me to balance full-time role, do Wansulting, make sure I engage with every single one of you, but more importantly, help people get into their careers, right? Because I found that as a result of me feeling like I have to act even harder, recruit even harder, network even harder than the person next to me, it's allowed me to appreciate and develop a level of work ethic that I feel like has transited really well into the professional environment, which has allowed me to get promoted early at Google, which has allowed me to be the first intern at Google from my school. And so that's a little bit about my background, a little bit about my parents and how they've sort of impacted me. And I see in the chat, everyone saying hashtag first generation, hashtag low income, immigrant stories. I love that. It's so near and dear to my heart. So if you guys ever need any help, or you guys are from those backgrounds, just hit me up. I love talking about that.
I love that. And I'm seeing that, and I feel it too, because I'm a first gen myself. That's and, right. Proud Latina, first gen. A lot of you guys know my story as when I came here 5 years ago, but seeing how we first gen have no clue, no idea when we're navigating college, when we're going to these networking events, we're if regular people who have the knowledge are here, we're right here, right? We have no clue what we're doing, right? And so we're navigating life, and I feel like lives like this and events like this are sort of important, right? Because it's good to give knowledge. If you have the knowledge, give it away, right? It's good that we are sort of helping those people, and you have been doing that for a while. And I actually wanted to sort of go a little bit about that area, right? What inspired you to help underdogs turn into winners with Wansulting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just touching upon your previous point about first gen, low income, no resources, right? Like that's pretty much what my parents had to do, right? Like they did research on colleges, and while I was trying to study for the SATs and trying to figure out, what is college, what is majors and all this stuff. And, I think that level of work ethic for me has been my superpower, which has been amazing. But to your question around what has led me to focus so much on career development, specifically for those who come from non-traditional background, right, is that I found that those people are the ones who have the least amount of resources. They have the least amount of care and attention, both from the educational institutions, because the educational institutions, they want to help the ones who are most likely to get jobs, right? Their role is to make sure their students get jobs, and if you could invest an hour of time to someone who has a huge network, someone who has this huge network and family of people who they can rely on and ask for resume help, or would you rather invest an hour to someone who has no idea what a resume is, right? As an educational institution, you would expect that they would invest an hour to help those who have resources because it's easier to give them jobs. It's easier for them to land roles, right? So there's this huge gap, educational gap, opportunity gap that we saw that we're like, hey, we need to tackle this. We need to help give the power of recruiting back into the job seeker's hand and not expect that colleges are going to handhold you throughout the process, because chances are they just don't have the resources to do that. It's not that they don't want to, they just don't have the resources. And so for me, I understand the firsthand of what career of going to college, not knowing how to wear a suit, not knowing what recruiting is, what a resume is, really being nervous about my first on-campus interview for an IT center, getting rejected, and being so disappointed and sad that I did, to now really sharing a lot of the learnings that I've had in the professional world in hopes that other people who don't have those resources can learn from them and not make the mistakes that I did.
I love that. I love that. And I love the part that you said about like not knowing what to wear, right? So when I came here, like I remember my first ever networking event, my mom actually borrowed me like made that post. And it was like very hard for me to say that because I've never had a dress shirt to wear, right? Like that was not something that was usual or normal in my country. And so my mom borrowed that shirt to me, and to this day, I still have there's so many events with that shirt, right? Because I value the things that we're being given by others that we might not recognize it, especially now. Like we might have some sort of things or knowledge that we might not recognize that are important right now, but in the future you might see the value that it really has on you. And so I think that based on that, I wanted to sort of like ask you if there's something that you could have done 3, 5, 6 years ago, like back in college. What is the something that you wish you would have done that maybe a lot of people in college that are watching right now can do?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I feel like even though I made a lot of mistakes in college, I feel like as a result of me learning those mistakes, it's helped me understand to, one, never do that again, but also it's helped me feel like, wow, like whatever problem I go through, I've been reinforced time and time again that I could figure this stuff out alone. If there's one thing that I would change though, or would have known 5, 6 years ago while I was in college, is I wish I truly understood the importance of networking to get into roles, right? Because this is something we talk about at Consulting all the time, right? For you to apply to a job, people only think that there's only one way to get a job. People always assume that you have to click that apply button online for you to get a job. That is absolutely not the case, especially in today's day and age, because guys, right, the biggest thing that you guys have to know about what recruiting looked like 5 years ago versus what recruiting looks like today is that there is such a huge reach that recruiters and companies can have on online platforms like LinkedIn, and they can almost service all your recruiting needs just simply through those platforms, right? So the way that we always think about it is when you apply to a job, is there's always 4 tiers, right? And it goes from most effective, which is tier 1, to least effective, which is tier 4. Tier 1 is what we call a hiring manager referral, right? It's those where it is the manager who is hiring for that actual role, right? And they're the decision makers in the process of saying, hey, is this someone I want on my team? Yes or no? Because if you can get a hiring manager to love you and for them to say, wow, I want to hire Stephanie Nuesi onto my team. I want Stephanie on my team. Chances are you're probably going to have a much easier chance to get an interview than if you were to just throw your resume into the book, right? The second tier is what we call a hiring team member recommendation. So someone on the hiring team sharing and recommending you to the hiring manager or the recruiter to say, wow, Stephanie is someone that I absolutely can see on my team, right? And I believe that we should give Stephanie a shot. If you have an internal vouch, if you have someone internally vouching for you like that, chances are you're probably going to get an interview. And the last two that are least effective are internal referrals and dropping in your resume. So make sure as you're thinking about your job search, how much time are you spending on each and every one of these 4 tiers, right? Are you spending all your 80% of your time, 90% of your time sending out cold applications, or are you spending 90% of your time reaching hiring managers?
That's amazing that you mentioned that, because I feel like that 80% reduced to like basically, I would say 70 to 80% of students and professionals who apply for a job. And that shouldn't be the case, right? Because if people were to focus on those first tiers that you mentioned, the case of recruitment will be so different, right? And I feel like you mentioned those like recruitment strategies, and what happens is that I've seen it, working with clients and whatnot. I apply to XYZ role, but I never heard back, or I reach out to someone, as you said, reach out to someone, I never heard back, right? And then I asked, like, okay, did you follow up? No. The next question is, who else did you reach out to? Oh, I only reach out to those people because I was waiting for them to reply. And then it all dies down there. And then that's the problem. That's how people get demotivated. That's how people get discouraged, right?
Yeah.
And so for the people that are watching this right now, right, ask yourself, when was the last time you reached out to that person? And do you have those people in a networking sheet? I personally have that. The very first advice that I got, have a networking sheet, right? The people you connect with, those are going to be your connections forever. It's not someone that you're going to reach out to like once and then never again, right?
Yes.
I remember like this past Thanksgiving, Jerry knows because he also got it. I sent a Thanksgiving letter to literally almost all the connections that made a meaningful part in my life.
It's
and
true.
honestly, like this was not just a simple like handwritten letter. Like I actually put some time on this with like music and my picture and everything, because I wanted people to see like I care about you. Like this is not a transactional relationship, right? And then that's how you make a difference, because you never know, like 2 years from now, you never know, I might be working with Jerry. And that's just like you're saying, right? You never know. And so you should never like just walk away from like people, or just never talk to them again, because you're not gaining anything by doing that, right? So Jerry, do you have any tips on people who are reaching out on LinkedIn or any other platform, never get a response? What should they do?
Yeah, so great question. And I see that there are some questions in the chat that are getting at this. So I would say really ask yourself 2 things. 1, are you reaching out to enough people, right? One of the number one things that I've noticed in job seekers is that they'll say, hey, Jerry, this 4-tier strategy you talk about doesn't work. And I'll say, okay, tell me a little bit more. It's like, well, everyone I reach out to, they don't reply to me. Then I'm like, okay, well, how many people do you talk to or reach out to? They say 5, 15, 20, right? And at the end of the day, like you have to think like, well, are you really just going to give up after 5 or 10 people who may or may not even be using LinkedIn, right? Because again, LinkedIn is a job seeking platform as it stands today, right? And if you are a professional who's very comfortable in their career, chances are you're probably not going to spend, 5-6 hours on LinkedIn like myself or maybe even Stephanie does, right? Because they just don't have a reason to. So make sure that you reach out to as many people as possible, because you want to make sure that your connection request gets sent to the right people at the right times, because again, not many professionals use LinkedIn on a regular basis. And the second thing that you absolutely must do, right? And I wish I could share my screen here, but I won't, because I know that we have a lot of topics to cover, is I wish I could show you guys my connection requests, right? Right now, I think in the past 2 months or so, I think I've gotten over 4,000 pending connection requests.
That's crazy.
Yeah, within those 4,000,
let me ask you the question. Who sent you a personalized message out of those 4,000?
That's exactly what I was going to ask, right? In the chat, guys, guess out of the 4,000 connection requests that I have pending right now, guess what percentage of them actually sends personalized invites? Type them out in the chat. I want to see the numbers. It can be, because again, like a lot of people think that it's a number, but I want to debunk some myths. And it's definitely, I'm sure you also get a lot of connection requests as well.
I do get a lot of connection requests, but I can tell you, I will tell you the number. So I want people on the chat to say the number of connection requests that Jerry actually got with the percentage, right? How many do you think they actually like send a personalized message? For me, I get very few. I get very few personalized messages, personalized invites, and it meant so much when you do actually get. So people are putting in the chat. Let's see, Jerry.
Yeah, so I see numbers ranging from 1%, 10%, 1,000, 10%, 50%. Guys, it is roughly about 5 to 2%-ish.
That's crazy. Wait, 5% of 4,000. Hold on. I need to do this calculation right now. Hold on. 4,000 times 5%. That's 200 people.
Guys, it is very, very small, right? If I go through my first initial list of 100, about 5 people will send me personalized invites. And even of those 5 people, 3 out of those 5 typically are, hey, Jerry, I'd love to get a job. Would love to connect, right? They have to ask. They don't want to get to know me. They don't want to get to know a little bit about that. Like they're expecting something out of me, right? And the other 2, which are typically the ones I actually accept and invest in, right? They're the ones who are like, hey, Jerry, I noticed that you liked sharing a lot about your immigrant background, and you talk a lot about your parents, similar to the question that Stephanie asked, and said, hey, I'd love to talk specifically about how you've been able to navigate the professional environment as someone who doesn't have someone to ask all these questions to. Right? Like when you ask me very specific questions like that, that tells me 1, that you know my story, 2, you're able to empathize with me, and 3, that you're walking in a similar shoes that I have a couple of years ago, and I want to help you so that you don't run into those similar situations, that you don't make those same rookie mistakes that I made when I first started working, right? So as you guys are thinking about sending those invites, right? What type of messages I should do. The best messages are the ones where you don't have to copy and paste. They're the ones that are very direct, simple, but most importantly, that you're upfront and clear about your intentions.
I absolutely love that. You know why? Because as I think about the type of messages that they send, right, there's a reason why you're not getting a response, right? And so you need to think about and redirect your strategies. I made a post, I think it was yesterday, about redirecting strategies. So, Jerry, I'm sure you heard this before. If you're working on a project, even in a team, anywhere in life, right, and you do the same thing over and over and over again, what are you going to get? The same results, right? So we talk about rejections, we talk about like not hearing back, we talk about responses, and then we think, okay, so what are you doing? Oh, so you've been doing this for a long period of time, you're getting the same results, right? That's so right. For the people in the chat, right, in the audience, we have a lot of people connected right now. If you have a question for Jerry or for myself, put the hashtag question and put it in the chat, and we'll actually get some questions at the end. But Jerry, I know we have a lot to talk about here, so I just want to quickly go here. You are a master of LinkedIn. I have to say it. I don't know about that. I completely and absolutely love your stories, your content. I follow your content last year of how you talk about your interviews at different tech companies. You were named, if you guys don't know, we're talking to a LinkedIn top voice for 2020 for technology. That is something, right? And so talking about LinkedIn in general, what are some of the LinkedIn strategies you suggest for both students and professionals? Just in general for networking, whether it's to get a job, for whatever the case may be, what are your top 3, 4, 5 strategies for LinkedIn?
Yeah, great question. So I would say the first part about any LinkedIn is you need to have a good foundation. Having a good foundation means that you need to have a good and polished LinkedIn profile. Without having a good and polished LinkedIn profile, almost everything that you'll do on the platform is kind of moot. Right. So the way to have a good profile is one where you can make sure that you how I view LinkedIn is almost like you want to tease the person to get a high level understanding of the work that you've done, right? But not all the details, because no one is really going to spend an hour, 30 minutes, 15 minutes reading through every single line of your resume or of your LinkedIn. So make sure that when you guys go through your LinkedIns, read through everything and see how long it takes, right? If it takes more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, then chances are you might have to start condensing some things, right? Because again, people's attention spans are especially short in the digital world. So make sure that you have impactful hooks and bullet points and small lines and texts within your entire LinkedIn, such that it's very, very easy for someone to get hooked in and stay hooked in. The second tip I'd recommend is, again, using the LinkedIn platform proactively to create those opportunities for yourself, right? If you're thinking about landing a job, landing an internship and such, well, the people who are behind the machines and behind the job posts are actual people, right? They're the ones who make the hiring decisions. They're the ones who are in the meeting rooms discussing candidates. So the more that you can put yourself out there, by putting yourself out there, I specifically mean finding those people, connecting with them, getting on the phone with them, making sure you leave a good lasting impression on them. That's how you proactively go out and seek those opportunities. And the last thing that I think most people don't do, which I highly recommend that you do, is something that I wish I started like Stephanie much earlier when I was in college, right? Is I wish that I had spent time to create posts, comment on other posts, use LinkedIn as an actual platform, not just a tool to create opportunities for yourself, right? Because when you create content, two things will happen. One, LinkedIn SEO naturally will just bump your profile up. And second thing that'll happen is that people are going to start taking notice of you. And people could include recruiters, it could include professionals, it could include hiring managers. And if any one of those three looks at your profile, comments on your posts, likes your post, what do you do to those people, guys? What you do to those people is you reach out to them, right? Because what you've done here now is you've gone from having to spend all your time sending all these connection requests and stuff to now you have almost like a lead generation tool through your content to now have people come to you. And that's what we call at Consulting reactive recruiting, right? And that's something that's highly underrated. So again, the three things that I highly recommend that you do on LinkedIn, the best strategies, again, making sure your LinkedIn profile is short, direct, concise, impactful, making sure you proactively reach out to people and connect with them. And the last thing is creating content so you can reactively get those opportunities for you guys.
Oh man, if you guys are not energized and hype, let me tell you, I am, because what Jerry just said is awesome. If you guys are excited, hit the thumbs up button, hit the both button. This is the both, one of the both guys here. So you guys should definitely show some love to Jerry. Hit up the thumbs up button. Let us see some love. This is amazing. So actually, based on the comments that you just said, someone asked this question for me, and I think it directly relates to what you just said. So how do you get those internships at this company, Stephanie, right? One of the companies that I actually got one of the internships at, it was very funny, the story. I said it before, but I don't think I've ever said it on LinkedIn. I made a post on LinkedIn last year, 2019. So look at the timeline. March of 2019, made a post on LinkedIn. A recruiter at the company saw the post. She related to it. She liked it, right? And then she messaged me. Oh, I really like this post. I really resonated with it. I'm also Latina. And then, it was really good to see that she was the one reaching out to me because of a post, right? Yep. And then I kept following up with her just to see how I could help her. This is the key, guys. I never asked her, like, here's my resume, hire me, here I am, right? No, what I did is I knew that I have a strong university connection in terms of college students. So I said, if you ever have any roles open, let me know and I'll help you. I'll share the links, right? A lot of people have asked me, what are you, how do you get all these resources from? Where do you get it from? And I'm like, I just help people. Right. And a lot of the times you'll be surprised, recruiters need help, with applications for diversity programs and different programs and internships, and they don't get this help. Well, I was able to help those people because I wanted to do it, not because I wanted anything out of it. Right. And I remember helping her. And 3-4 months later, or 5, in August 2019, I go to a conference. I received a phone call. Right. I received a phone call. Saturday morning. Okay, it's a Saturday morning. I just arrived to the airport. I get to the hotel, and I received a phone call, and it was her, right? And she said, "Hey, Stephanie, this is excellency person from this company. Remember me? We talk on LinkedIn, right?" Like, hey, I was so scared because I was like, "How did she get my number? What is going on, right?" And then she said, "Oh, we saw your resume on the talent network, and I saw your name, and I recognize you. And I want to just tell you that we have two positions open, and we want to interview tomorrow for a final round." And I look at the phone like, is she getting the wrong person?
That's amazing, Stephanie.
I'm not even kidding. I'm
That's
not even kidding.
amazing.
And I got the final round interview in less than 24 hours. So mind you, I have less than 24 hours to prepare. That's why I tell people, do not wait until you get an interview to actually prepare for the interview. Like, if you know you're interested in a company, I can tell you have a Google Drive with more than 12 companies' research notes. So if I ever get on an interview, I know the research notes are already there. All I have to do is just prepare myself, right? The second thing, I already did the networking. I didn't have to go on LinkedIn and ask people from the company to help me to see how the interview is or how to like approach the interview because I already did that before, right? So at this point, I was at a point where, okay, I did all I had to do. All I need to do now is prepare and get confidence. Next day, I walk into the interview. I did what I had to do. I got the offer, right? And this is how it happened, all based on that post on LinkedIn and keeping that relationship going. But I want to emphasize, I mentioned two things here, right? I've already networked with the people at the company, number one. I have already did the research on the company and it's all on my Google Drive.
Mhm.
So why should we wait until something happened to then want to do something? And I'm sure, Jerry, you're seeing that a lot. People wait to get the interview to start networking. That's a no, right? You
Yeah.
should network right now, right after. You know what you guys should do. I would leave the when this life ends. I will come back and literally connect with everyone who commented on this live.
There you
You know
go.
what? I will send everyone a personalized message, and I will be like, "Hey, I saw you connected with the live with Stephanie and Jerry. I'd love to connect with you. I saw in your LinkedIn this and that, right?" You're gonna get probably like 100 new people today. Out of those 100 new people, there probably might be 5 people who work at the company you want to work at.
That's
That's
right.
networking. That's it. Like, it's literally not that hard, right? And I just gave you guys like a great example of that. Another great example. If you guys are interested, make a post about this LinkedIn Live, right? Tag me and Jerry, right? You guys are gonna get not just the exposure, but you guys are gonna get people that you never met before. Recruiters are gonna see you. That's how you get noticed, right? You want to establish that brand on LinkedIn. And so now that I said the story, Jerry, I wanna sort of like pass it to you. If you guys have questions, put it in the chat. We're gonna, highlight you guys. But Jerry, besides what I just said, what are some other networking strategies that you have found have worked on a lot of people that can get them to get a foot in the door?
Yeah.
And before you answer that question, this is a two-part question. So um, a lot of people get stuck on the initial screening process, right? How do you suggest people pass through that process, through that screening process? So again, networking tips, right? And then from there, how do people go from like networking to passing through that first initial process when applying for a company?
Yeah. So great question. So the first part of landing any interview, making a great first impression, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, well, am I willing to go through the machine, aka the ATS, aka the resume screeners, right? Or am I willing to go through a human being, right? Really be honest with yourself. Say, hey, which of those do I believe will give me a higher chance, right? Do I believe this resume speaks more highly of me than myself? If so, then yeah, go keep applying, right? But for most people, I would bet that your resume probably just shows one side of you, right? It probably doesn't show how hard of a worker you are. It probably doesn't show how personable you are. And it probably doesn't show how much energy you have and passion for the company that you're interviewing for, right? Or that you want to get into. So make sure that you understand that you can either go online or you can go through someone else. And then comes the question, if you believe, well, now let's go through someone else, then comes the question of, well, how do I actually make that good first impression, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best first impressions are the ones where people feel like they're talking to a friend, right? I heard this saying, and I think this is so true. People don't remember what you said, but people will remember how you made them feel.
Oh,
Right?
I love that.
Yeah. So make sure that as you go through these networking calls, right, ask questions about the other human being, right? I think most people make the mistake of, if there's Jerry and there's the job that Jerry has to work in, everyone always asks a question about the job that I have to work in, not questions about Jerry. The most closer you can get to asking questions about Jerry, then slowly branching off into the work that I'm in, but also somehow looping that into myself, right? You then somehow convert the conversation from, well, it is now a professional talking to a student. It is now from a friend talking to a friend, right? And when you can show that you're someone that this other person can be a friend with, right off the bat, you are standing out from the candidate pool because you check off a huge category people look for. When people recruit, they look for two things. Can you do the job? And can I see myself working with you? If you can first sell, hey, can I see myself working with you? Then they're going to start asking questions about what skills do you have, right? So make sure as you guys are thinking about networking and making a good first impression, ask yourself, am I asking questions about Stephanie Nuesi, or am I asking questions about Stephanie's role or Stephanie's job, right? And again, those things aren't mutually exclusive, but you want to make sure you first ask about the person, not their job.
I love that. And you mentioned something very important. I feel like I want to know Jerry the person professional, not Jerry just the role, because I mean, I could find out what Jerry does by just Googling, strategy analyst operations.
Yeah.
I'm not even kidding. Like, you could literally find it on Google, right? And so, like, why would I take 5, almost 10 minutes of the entire time that could be used for something else on asking you, what do you do? Like, you know what I mean? Those are the type of things that should be a little bit different. And so, going from there, right, making the first impression, networking. Let's say you got the interview. You are on the interview stage right now. I know a lot of people that are watching right now are on the interview stages right now. And so someone asked, I'm actually going to show it right now. Someone asked, Laurie, thanks for the question. What questions should we be asking our interviewer? And I would actually add, how do you have a successful interview, Jerry?
Yeah, Laurie, great question. And it's something that I always think a ton about as well. The questions that I ask the interviewer aren't things about, hey, tell me a little bit about what projects are your team working on, right? Because those are questions that I could answer, or I could get information on by just networking with people, right? So I like to make sure that the questions that I ask, again, follow that same principle that I was talking about. I want to ask questions about that person, right? The questions I ask is, well, hey, Stephanie, thank you so much for this interview. I'd love to get to know how you ended up in the position you are today, sitting across the table, interviewing me. What's your story, right? Because when you open it in that way, you suddenly now you're talking to Stephanie as a person, but also you're slowly weaving in that the professional job side of Stephanie with that initial question that you had, right? So those are the kind of questions I would ask. And the way to do well in interviews is to really make sure that you do 3 things. You're concise. You answer the question, right? Believe it or not, people don't answer the question. And the thing is, you always share a little bit about the impact or the learning that you've had, right? Depending on the question. So one of the biggest mistakes I think people make when they go through interviews is that they'll just talk for 5 minutes, right? And keep in mind, each interview is about 30 minutes. So spending a sixth of the time, 16% of the interview just answering one interview question probably is not the best use of time. Remember, it's a conversation. In each conversation, you don't want to be the one dominating the conversation. Otherwise, it just turns off the other person.
I love that. And I would add to that, right? When you're asking those questions to the interviewer, make sure you listen to the first 5 minutes of your interview, right? And why is this important? Well, most of the times they tell you the answer to the questions you have at the beginning of the interview. And so you're left with like zero questions. That's what you think, right? But as you go through the interview, you're definitely gonna have some insightful questions. Like, for example, I'll tell you an example. If I'm interviewing with Jerry right now, there's one question that I would always want to ask Jerry. Jerry, what was the biggest challenge that taught you the biggest lesson that you've learned at your current role?
Wow, that's a good one.
Now, Jerry's going to go back in time to when he first started, right? And he's going to go through all those years to look at what was the biggest challenge and what did he learn. And then that makes him think. Now he doesn't have to worry about telling me like what he does at his job. Now he's looking more of like a personable sort of thing on that interview. Now I'm taking the interview to a next level because people don't ask those type of questions, right? And then the second thing is you're also teaching, in a sense, the interviewer something. So if I read an article about the 7 C's of adapting to changes, right? Being adaptable to changes. I don't know if the interviewer read that article, but because we're in COVID-19, I might want to talk about it. For example, I read an article about this and this and this. I want to know your takes on what do you think a successful employee do to adapt to changes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that I tell you, 1% of people ask that question. Probably almost no one thinks about those things. I read a book, for example, I have my favorite book in front of me, Be a People Person by John Maxwell, and talk about being a people person in all type of leadership roles, right? And so I mentioned that on those questions. Like I read this book called Be a People Person by John Maxwell, and he mentioned this and this and this. I want to know, right? And now it's like I'm sort of like asking Jerry his thought on something that I like, so he can see that I'm not just about like the company, so not a company. I'm just not about like the asking about the role in the role, but I'm sort of like going into what I can add value into that interview. And so that leaves the interview in sort of like a positive side. I always think of interviews like a roller coaster, right? Like you start like sort of nervous and then you're like going into it, you're like you have this heat and this
Yeah.
high, right? And then it gets to a point where like it sort of dies down, right? You get a little bit more relaxed. And then the problem is that at the end, people forget that you're still on the interview and then they just take it too easy and then just ask 1, 2 questions and then bye-bye, right? And so it should be more of like, you want to enthrone. I'm a public speaker. I can tell you the number one thing they tell me in public speaking, you want to end strong or you did all of that for nothing. You
Mm-hmm.
spend 1 hour doing a speech for nothing because people are not going to, you know what people are going to remember when they talk to you? The last 2 sentences that you said, because that's how the brain works. That's how memory works. And so
Mm-hmm.
that should be the same theory that you apply on your interview. An interviewer will remember you for one thing that they talk on the interview about you that they like, and then the questions that you ask them.
Mm.
Right? It shouldn't be that complicated. It's just that we make it complicated. And so the same principles that we apply to any other things in life, we should be applying it to interviews too as well. So for all the people that are interviewing right now, best of luck to you guys. You guys can reach out to either Jerry or me. Like we're more than happy to help. And okay, so I'm gonna hide this question because let's say you did the interview, right? Things didn't go as planned and you got rejected, right? Jerry, what advice do you have for people who get rejection after rejection and they get discouraged and they want to give up? I know that you go by the motto of like, you got this, right? That one yes. So what can you tell those people that recently got a rejection letter and want to give up on 2021?
Yeah, that's that's such an important question. I'm so glad that you asked that. To everyone is who's going through rejection, I'm sorry, it sucks, right? And it's something that I feel like is wrong with the recruiting system because the recruiting system is meant and is built in a way where you have to get rejected by X number of companies, by 10, 30, 50, 60, even 100 companies for you to get that one yes, right? But the positive side of recruiting is that then you get to go through 100 different opportunities to truly identify, well, what is that one opportunity that makes you stand out? And guys, how many jobs do you actually need? You only just need one job, right? And so for those people who are getting rejected today, understand that venting, being sad is part of the process. For me, even when I was looking for my role after Google, right, I made a series of posts of where I interviewed with 10 companies in 6 weeks, and I got I got 8 interviews without even applying online, right? But what people don't see, right, is that for me to have gotten there, I've sent out probably 1,500 connection requests. I probably sent out and called about 60 or 80 people and just networked with them within that time frame. I spent nights, I spent weekends, I spent mornings, right? I prioritized that over my work, and for my actual work, I would do in the nighttime, right? So know that it's part of the process. Even for someone like, I was thinking like, man, like I worked at Google. Everyone should want me, right? Absolutely not, right? Like I went through so many series of rejections to the point where I even started questioning my own. But I was like, oh my gosh, like if I'm getting rejected, like, and I'm preaching about career strategies, like, am I a phony? Like, am I an imposter for doing this if I myself can't land offers? And thankfully, you know, I did end the process with landing 2 offers, which is awesome. And I discontinued the ones I was currently going through at the time. But just know that it's part of the process, right? And for each of those rejections comes potential opportunities, as long as you're able to maintain good relationship with all the recruiters that you've had, right? A good mentor once told me that if you can create a good network of rejections, then you never have to recruit again. Then you never will get rejected again, right? So for those rejections, make sure that you leave a lasting impression on those recruiters, because those recruiters, chances are they're probably going to stay in the recruiting space tomorrow, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And if they are in the recruiting space, then they'll probably hit you up if they had a good experience with you.
Love that. And I think that, you know, when we think about rejection is redirection, that one salty motto, right? I can tell you that I've been talking about my rejections all the time because it hurts. You know, it sucks, right? It's what we just said. But there's something about mindset that I wish everyone would know, and the difference of like accepting that something didn't work, but that you're still going after it. And I think like there is a difference between being stuck on the same thing that you're going over and over after it, versus you fail, you learn what you fail, and then you keep going and you try again, right? There's 2 different scenarios here. And so what happens is that people stay in scenario 1 where like they're stuck on that same thing that they're doing over and over again to get the same results, versus scenario 2 where they could be actually doing things different to get that one yes, right? I can tell you, sure, I got rejected so many times, but like, guys, like honestly, 4 or 5 years ago, I barely spoke English. For me to even get the chance to like get an interview with a company was a huge deal, and I appreciated that, right? Sometimes we don't even think about like the how fortunate we are to even get to that position of getting an interview out of thousands of candidates. That means that you're getting somewhere. That means that there's something about you that the company wants. If they can't have you right now, they might have you a year later. Don't just give up right away.
Yeah.
Right. And so with this, I want to ask this question because a lot of people ask me this question too. And it says, it's for you, Jerry. Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to break into a different industry than the one they're currently in?
Yeah. And Stephanie, I want to shout out Stephanie because I think a lot of people might look at Stephanie and say, wow, she's had it easy, right? She's interned at all these different companies. She's running her own consulting firm. But I feel like Stephanie's story is definitely like an iceberg, right? You can look at the tip and go, wow, she's so privileged. So it must have been so easy for her. But people just don't appreciate that, hey, even learning the language English was not something that she was born with. It's not something that she had to grow up with. So yeah, Stephanie, I want to give you a lot of kudos.
Shout out to all international students who are like watching this, and like we love our international student community.
Right.
Like you guys like mean so much to all of us, especially me, because I know the struggles. And so, you know, if you're an international student, say I'm an international student, say I'm proud and loudly, because that's not something to be embarrassed about. I always say this, like your assets are not your liabilities. Like being international, it's your asset, it's what represents you, it's your background. You bring different perspectives to the table. I always say that, like I like to say it out loud, right? Like when I walk into those meetings, when I walk into those, you know, and especially if you're a professional and that's your background and you're walking into those meetings and whatever the case may be, walking with the confidence of you bringing different perspectives to the table. You have different values, and don't be afraid to speak up, right? I used to be afraid because of the fact that I didn't speak English so well, and I understood that not speaking up and just keeping it to myself was not helping anyone, right? And so I decided to just change your mindset. Like whatever you bring to the table, you bring it to the table because that's who you are, right? And no one can judge you, no one can discriminate. You're international, whatever, first gen, right? That's who you are, and that's the values you bring. But yeah, Jerry, take it away. Sorry, I just got excited a moment right there.
Yeah, no, own it, please. I love it. So Richard, great question. So whenever I think about changing companies, right? When you think about getting a new role, one of three things will happen. You either change your function, right? Or one of four things will happen. You either change your function, but keep the same industry. So for example, you might be in tech, you go from marketing to finance. Or similarly, you might change your industry but keep your function. So you go from analytics and healthcare to analytics and tech, or you do both, or you stay within the same industry and same function, right? So it's one of those four. What you have to realize is figuring out, well, what of these four am I doing? Do I want to stay within the same industry and current function, right? If so, that's probably a very easy switch. And am I doing both, where that probably is a much harder change because you're going to be in a completely new world, right? But the other two are much more doable. The harder, but definitely doable, where you're either changing the industry or you're changing your function. So it's really, you want to make sure that you are figuring out, well, when you say industry, what do you mean by industry? Do you mean industry as in healthcare tech, or do you mean industry as in function where you're talking about analytics to marketing? Depending on what your answer is, your strategy changes. So for example, if you're trying to change industries, but you're trying to keep the same function, so you want to go from analytics in healthcare to analytics in tech, then the key thing you want to show on your resume through your interviews, through your networking calls, is you only want to talk about your analytical capabilities. You don't want to talk about healthcare and all this stuff, because then people start branding you as the healthcare professional. You want to be branded as the analytics professional, so that then you can take that brand and then go everywhere else with it. Similarly with the industry. I hope that helps.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jerry. And so let's see. So we're gonna take questions from you guys now. So if you guys have any questions, drop it on the chat. We have like 5 to 10 more minutes left. So if you guys have any questions, put it on the chat, #question. Also, if you're liking this live right now, click the thumbs up button, share on your profiles, comment here that you're energized, because we're about to leave, or I promise you, we are about to leave with a great note. I promise you. So one of the last questions, Jerry, how to ace those 10, 15 minutes of coffee chat with a recruiter, what to ask, what to tell about ourselves, except for what is on your resume?
Yes, I love this question so much. Thank you for asking it. The number one thing that people love to hear are stories, right? So one thing that people often do is they'll just say, hey, this is currently what I do. This is my work. I'm looking to get into this internship, right? It's not a story. What you should do is tell them about your actual story, right? And say, hey, I come from a first-gen low-income background where I graduated college and I was one of the first in my family to do so back in 2017. I studied business, and now I currently do this. And now that I've done this, now I really want to move forward in my career to do one of these three options, right? Make sure that you tell that cohesive story so that it helps the other person to understand, well, who are you? What kind of professional are you? And what exactly can I, as a professional that I'm doing a coffee chat with, what can I actually help you with, right? And the second thing I'd really recommend is just honestly what we were talking about before, right? Like talk to them as a human being. Don't talk to them as a job. And the more that I think you guys can practice that, the more I think you'll be successful in these calls.
I love that. And I would actually add a little bit to that as well. Recruiters are human beings like you and I, like any student, right? So I think like there's that thing that recruiters hate the most is like when they're treated as if they're a transaction. Like, here's my resume, hire me, right? That I can tell you that must feel bad, because as a human being, right? Like, you're just being asked to just like check this for me and then goodbye, right? It shouldn't be like that. And so when you're having those conversations 10, 15 minutes with people, you should really go a little bit in depth and do your research, I would say. So the research portion is very important. Like, I would literally go on their profiles and see where they go to school to, right? And then I ask a question like, oh, I saw you went to this school. Like, how was it? What do you like about that school? I see their interest. If they're active on LinkedIn and they create content, I gather lots of questions based on that, right? If they're not active on LinkedIn, then I ask about their interests, right? Like things outside of work that they're interested about,
Right.
because that breaks the ice. Like I don't want to just walk into there and then just bomb like a bunch of questions to them, and then you're just like answering like a robot, right? Like back and forth, like you're in an actual interview, like shouldn't be like that. And so that's where a lot of coffee chats and things like that fail because of that reason. So when you have that 10-15 minute chat with a recruiter, don't just talk about like, your resume or what you bring to the table or what position. Don't ask them what positions are like hiring right now. Like honestly, I think Jerry even posted that. Like there's websites where you can actually check that. You could look at it online. Like instead of asking like what positions are open, ask what skills do you think someone who wants to work at your company might develop? How can I develop those skills? And things like that, right? Like you want to know about those things so you can go ahead and develop those things and become the person that they want you to be.
Right.
And that's very important. And then I mentioned the portion of like, if they create content on LinkedIn, I think I've seen so many recruiters, Terry can tell you, so many recruiters active on LinkedIn creating content. They're literally telling you, this is what I want to see on my candidates, right? I brought a lot of recruiters to LinkedIn Live last year as well, telling you guys, this is what I want to see on you guys. So you guys really need to go there and literally take those like sessions and like those informations and like act on it. Like the action portion is missing,
Yeah,
right?
I love
That,
that. So
that's like
true.
so important. Jerry, we have 3 more minutes left. So I actually want to take this moment to give you these 3 minutes so that you can mention your top job search strategies. And this is the topic of this live, right? How do you step up your job search game in 2021 to the next level? Jerry, take it away.
Guys, when I was recruiting, when we've helped hundreds get into their dream careers from non-traditional backgrounds, who don't graduate from the top schools, don't come from top companies, this is everything that we tell them, right? We walk through people, we tell them step by step. I'm going to tell you guys exactly what we do. So the first thing is to understand, well, what roles are available, right? What roles can I be applying for? Second thing then is to find out, well, now that I want to be a product manager, for example, how do I then start finding hiring managers, recruiters, reach out to them, send personalized invites, but more importantly, get them on the phone to pitch yourself, to learn a little bit more about their company and ask, end those calls with an ask and say, hey, and again, if this company is something you're interested in, say, I'd love to sounds like perfectly what I'm looking for. I'd love to know what is the best way for me to get my foot in the door, right? Guys, all you need to do is invest 30 minutes a day. If you guys create a calendar reminder for yourself, block off 30 minutes, put your phone away, turn off notifications on your computer, 30 minutes a day for you guys to dedicate to reaching out to people, ask for their advice, send personalized invites. In about 10 weeks, if you told me that you spent 30 minutes every single day for 10 weeks and you did not get a single interview, right? Then I will personally give you a job offer right then and there, right? So
I love that.
make sure that as you guys are thinking about tackling a career, know that it's something that you can control. It's not something that companies are the ones in control. It's not that something that you have to wait for. It's something that you can tackle today. So that's what I would recommend.
I love that. And before we leave, I also want to give you guys my one tip for job search strategy to level up. And that one tip is number one, own it. Believe in yourself. Like you got this, right? Your resume is just one part of you. Everything else is you, right? Whatever you have on LinkedIn or any other social media. Talking about social medias, by the way, that's Jerry's Instagram. That's my Instagram. If you guys want to follow us as well, you should follow us because Jerry just posted some amazing TikTok content on job search. You guys should definitely go for it. But talking about job search strategies, guys, look, 2021 is your year. And stop procrastinating, saying, I'll apply to that job a week later. Oh, it's not closing anytime, so I'll apply later. Hit that submit button tonight. Don't
right.
wait for it, right? And while you're waiting to hear back from the company, don't just sit down and wait for it. Go to networking. What Jerry said, 30 minutes talking to people, commenting on people's posts. I literally can tell you, people go on their phones and they look at their Instagrams every morning, right? I do the opposite. I go on LinkedIn and I follow my favorite content influencers and I comment on their posts. And guess what? Well, that's my Instagram. LinkedIn is my Instagram, right? And I spend some time scrolling over, seeing their amazing content. I sometimes get inspired and pull content based on that as well. I remember Jerry posted something and I was thinking about that same thought of line and I made a post because I got inspired out of Jerry as well, right? And so those kind of things are important because you're building up your brand. Think
Yep.
about it. What you're spending your time on, is it really worth it, the spend and the investment? Right? You should really be asking yourself those questions. And trust me, 2021 is your year and you'll get that one yes and you'll get that one offer. And you guys should really, 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 really connect with people that are commenting here. Come back to this live, take notes, and go apply it. I want to hear all of your guys getting those offers in 2021. All right,
Awesome.
awesome. Jerry, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, my first ever live. I can tell you we got over 1,000 views. So
Right.
that's awesome. And, you know, Alessa, we're finishing right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining the live. If you want to follow Jerry, follow me Instagram as well. If you guys want to connect with Jerry, send him a personalized invite, please. Um, Follow him. He has some amazing content, and you guys should really, really, really be doing your work and your research because this is your year. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us, and see you guys on the next one. I'm having Austin Belkak in 2 weeks. He has over 600,000 followers. You guys should not miss that out. I know Austin
Right.
was Jerry's and Jonathan's life as well. So you guys are really,
Right.
really love him. If you guys are excited for Austin, also, you guys should really, really follow me because a lot of great content is coming. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great night. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jerry.